Yeah. I had something and I teed it up and then I went blank. We are continuing our series on our four values here at Branches. And this week, Tim is taking us through our value of community. It's all you, man.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Hello, good morning. Let's see how warm my coffee is. Ooh, it's still good. Still always the best coffee in town. So just... so we are continuing this series. We're calling it our 2025 vision, and it is our four core values as Branches Church. Now, these have been with us since we started the church 9 years ago, and which are here. Let's see if you can remember them all. So it's the first one is joy, right, or enjoyment, and then last week was purpose. And then, today we're going to talk about community. And the last one is? Jesus. Yes, good Sunday school answer. Identity, like who we are in Christ, like we were singing about this morning. So before we go any further, let me just pray. Jesus, we thank you that you offered yourself for us to have communion with you. And we thank you for that. We thank you for your love and for your grace every morning. I just pray that as we give ourselves and this time to you, as we recommit our hearts and our minds and to you today, that you would transform us and you would reveal yourself to us. And may we go from here being your renewed people. And we just thank you for that. In Jesus' name, amen. So all these core values, they all come from John 15, which is also where our name comes from, Branches, because Jesus said, I'm the vine, you are the... Yes, you're the branches, and whoever abides in me, this is Jesus talking, he says, and I in him, or them, he it is that bears much fruit, for apart from me, you can do nothing. Today, we are talking about community, and just the fact that Jesus, as he's talking to his disciples on this night, and he's walking out of Jerusalem, I think he's walking past the vineyards on the edge of town and motions to his disciples as he's walking by, and maybe picks up a cluster of grapes, and he's like, I'm the vine, you are the branches. Like, the context of this whole thing is plural, okay? It's not just branch. You are the branch. No, it's you are the branches. This week, I went out to Eastern Washington on Thursday for a day, a very quick trip. Went out there, picked the snowiest day I could think of, and drove over the mountain and through these these wilderness little 2-lane roads to get out to this vineyard. And I was talking to a vineyard manager, and he didn't take me out and say, hey, I got something for you. And we walk out into this like empty field, and we get out there, and he says, look at this branch. Like, isn't it beautiful? Think of how amazing this is. All the grapes is going to grow this branch. No, it's like it's a massive vineyard. Like, the idea is that Jesus is growing a vineyard, not just a vine. And so we are here when we are made for community, and Jesus is calling us into his true community. Possibly one of the hardest things for us to do, to be in true community. And I'm going to get to that in just a minute. So God is growing this vineyard, and this is how Jesus calls his disciples. I love it in Matthew 4:18, which this is a special verse to me, because when I was 16 years old, I think, and 17. I was 17, and I went to summer camp at our church in Wisconsin. And I felt like God talked to me for the first time. And then I came back and I was like on fire. I was pumped up to follow Jesus and serve God with my life for the first time. And I was like reading my Bible every day. And then a few months down the road, I am like on my knees next to my bed being like, God, okay, I have not heard anything since that day. And I was like, I need to hear something. And I prayed, say something to me. And it was Matthew 4, 18 through 20. And I figured it was from God because it was 3 verses and they were a paragraph in the Bible. So I would never have thought of that on my own. So here it is. This is one of my life verses. So it says, as Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw 2 brothers, Simon, called Peter, and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, and they were fishermen. So, come, follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. And at once they left their nets and followed him. And going on from there, he saw 2 other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. And they were in a boat, and their father Zebedee, they were preparing their nets, and Jesus called them. And immediately they left their boat and their father and followed him. Boy, who would have got a spanking for doing something like that? But but like Jesus, from the beginning, is calling his disciples into community. Like they walk together. He calls these guys, and what they started doing is walking together, living together. They ate together. They did ministry together. Jesus taught them together. They laughed together. They struggled together. From the beginning, Jesus first calls his disciples into community. It is part of the DNA that Jesus set up to follow him. He did not ever ask anybody to be a lone wolf in this. Always, every time, he wants us to grow in community with each other. Now, this is, we live in this like highly individualistic culture, right? Individualism is probably one of the strongest core values of our culture. Sadly, I think it's pretty easy to see that this high individualism, though, in society has not led to more self-fulfillment or better life. Here's some statistics that would make us think that this individualism that we carry as a priority has led to more disconnection and loneliness. These statistics are from a couple years ago, but I don't know how much they've changed in 2 years, but it said 52% of Americans report feeling lonely. 59% of Americans say they have a best friend, and 12 say they don't have any close friends. 57% of Americans report eating all meals alone. More than 80% of young people under the age of 18 report feeling lonely. This isn't America, but Britain actually has designated a ministry of loneliness to address the epidemic. The Surgeon General has described loneliness and isolation as a serious health pandemic in America, a health equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, 29% increased risk of heart disease, 32% increased risk of stroke, and a 50% increased risk of developing dementia for older adults, all from loneliness. Our culture's solution to this loneliness is connectedness, social media, right? That helped. That solved the problem. So we are more connected than ever, but still so isolated. And connection has never been a replacement for the community that we are designed for and that we long for. That has just led to these false hopes of finding this online community. I listen to this one pastor, John Mark Comer, and he always talks about how online community is an oxymoron, like it's an impossibility. You cannot have online community, he says. So you can argue semantics if you want, but there's a part of that is just true. Like there's a part of it that is like talking face to face with each other is how we were made to live. It's how we were designed to communicate. So Jesus calls his disciples into this community. And look at this outcome then. So this is in Acts 2. This is after Jesus had He was crucified, and he rose again. He walked around with the disciples for a little bit longer, and then he ascended into heaven. And this is like just after that. So this is first generation church. In Acts 2:42, it says, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers, and awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as they had any need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received food with glad and generous hearts, praising God, having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their numbers day by day those who were being saved. Like the foundation of this biblical community. And this is what was birthed out of the disciples and what Jesus had taught them from this small community of followers. The biggest thing here is this devotion, that they devoted themselves to each other. Their faith in Jesus and devotion to each other was their defining characteristic. Okay, so they didn't, the thing about them is they didn't leave when they disagreed about politics or social constructs or budgets or the volume of the music or the pastor's beards, the kids program. They didn't leave over those, but they devoted themselves to each other. So much that even as we read this list of people, we didn't read it, but as we look at the 12 disciples, they were so devoted to each other and to Jesus that even this, as we think of Matthew or Levi was this tax collector who worked for the Roman government, and Simon the Zealot, he was actually part of a group of people who wanted to violently overthrow the Roman Empire. And they were both called by Jesus to follow him together. And that didn't break them up. I think of our culture right now, and how devoted to one another are we when it comes to can we disagree politically? Can we disagree culturally? I know we all agree on we like the same food, so that's fine. Yes, we agree. Can we be devoted to one another in sports? But they were so committed, so devoted to each other, and they were committed to this practice of loving each other and growing together over their own preferences. This practice of fellowship and generosity, gathering at the temple, breaking bread in homes, praising God. We are great at sharing our preferences, right? I get voicemails. I get a call every day from Google saying, hey, if you get more Google reviews, people will be able to find you better in searches. Every single day I get this message on my phone. But how many of you leave Yelp reviews? Oh, yeah, yes. Are you good at it? Leave Google reviews. And we do this with church. Branches is, proud to say, Branches is a 5-star rated on Google. So you are at the right place. There is absolutely no problems here. We have 3 reviews. Yes. True, and one's my mom, so. The proof of this is that we have a term called church shopping, right? We tend to think of church as this exchange, this community that we come to for an exchange, we go there to get something. That was not the model of the early church. This is our individualistic, consumer society's influence in it. The gathering in the early church was a group of people devoted to each other and practicing the teachings of Jesus. They practiced agape love for each other. The focus was not meant to meet their own personal needs, but to meet the needs of this community. the focus is not on getting, but on giving. Now, our culture would tell us, like, if I don't focus on getting my needs met, my needs will not be met. Like, have you thought that? Like, how many times have you heard, you got to take care of number one. You got to take care of yourself first. You have to put your own mask on before you can help somebody else's. No, that's probably a good idea on an airplane if those little masks fall down. But but I don't know if that is the rule of life. That you have to look out for number one. Because look what happened in this community. It said that people were selling and giving and being generous to anyone who had needs. They weren't fighting over resources to meet their own needs. They were generously giving to others. So, like, I mean, it's easy to think this. If I don't take care of myself and my own needs, my needs will not be met. But in this community, their needs were met by others all the time. It says there's no need among them. And it said they had favor with everybody because of this. Now imagine a community like that. Now imagine this a community like where the church in America has favor with everybody because this is how they saw us caring and loving for each other. I read this a long time ago once. I heard it from John Tyson, a pastor, church planter in New York. He wrote this out as the gospel of preference. It says, this is Acts 2:42, according to the gospel of preference. It says, they studied the apostles' teachings when they had time. They went to fellowship when they could fit it in. They prayed when they needed something and got coffee together every now and then, but it was good coffee. They were content without and had low expectation for signs and wonders in their midst. They sometimes talked about generosity, but they kept their possessions to themselves. 2 out of 5 Sundays, they came to a corporate gathering. They didn't invite people into their homes and rarely revealed their hearts. They were largely irrelevant to all the people, and occasionally someone was randomly saved. It hits hard because that's probably closer to the truth than what this Acts 2 description of the church is. And this, I'm not here, this isn't like a condemning, like a, come on everybody, get your act together. But true community is very difficult. Why is it so hard? But I think it's because we've all been hurt. We've all been hurt in community. And we've probably, if you've been around church for a little bit, you've probably been hurt in church by someone in church. It's probably me. I'm sorry. Like, we all have hurts, scars, baggage, wounds that we bring into this community with us. Many of us have this like religious trauma that we are struggling with and that we're dealing with. And always in the words of Michael Scott, fool me once, strike one, fool me twice, strike 3. Always have to quote The Office. But, you've been hurt enough to know, like, fool me, now it's just like, fool me once, strike 3. You're just out. I'm not, like, going through that road again. It hurt. It was painful. Like, our capacity for grace decreases as we suffer wounds, and especially wounds from within our own community. It hurts the most when it's the people we love the most who hurt us. So we put walls up around us. We put safeguards around our hearts. They become these like fortresses, these strongholds that we build to prevent us from getting hurt. And this is blocking us from true community. And we only let people get so close. Another reason it's hard is to be in this true community is because we often bring in these like unrealistic expectations, idealism, right? We go into a community thinking, oh, well, this is going to fix everything for me. This is going to be perfect. This is going to, like I've talked about doing pre-marriage counseling for couples, and we use this one thing, you do an online survey thing, but one of the categories that we talk about is idealistic distortion. And there's people who go into it who think our love is so strong that we will never have a problem. I had one couple that was like that. We have never had a fight. And you're like, you're talking about like communication or problem solving or like all those things with these categories. And they're like, no, we're fine. We've never had a fight. I don't think we're ever going to have a fight. Needless to say, you can all guess that they did not last very long because their first thing came up quickly and it tore them apart. But we bring that into community. Bonhoeffer, who wrote the book Life Together, and you should, there's a movie out about his life right now. I haven't watched it. I was like reading this week, and I was thinking, I should watch it this week, and I didn't have time. But there's a quote in his book Life Together. It says, the person who loves their dream of community will destroy community, but the person who loves those around them will create community. We have this, like the evolution of community then often looks like this, when we're excited to meet new people. I love meeting new people. I just love it. It is so thrilling to me just to meet people and hear their stories. And then you find things in common. Like yesterday I met this couple, and and they came in, the guy was like, I had a Wisconsin thing, and he's like, are you from Wisconsin? I'm like, yes. Are you from Wisconsin? We're both from Wisconsin. And you're a Packer fan? Me too. Like, you like cheese and Culver's burgers? Me too. I love all that. Your family's in Green Bay? Mine too. Like, we hit it off. Like, we had all these things in common. It was like so fun just to talk about all those things. And we talked for like an hour, and then or more, like 3 hours. And then when they were getting ready to leave, the Midwest goodbye is to say like bye once, and then go walk them over to the door and say goodbye again. And then they go out, and you walk out and say goodbye outside the door, and then you walk them to their car and say goodbye again. Like the whole thing, we did all of it. It was like so fun. This is like the beginning of new community. It's just like you can tell how excited I am to meet these people. And they're super fun. They're like dancers in the Northwest Ballet. And I was like, wow, that is so cool. You're from Wisconsin and you're out here dancing in the ballet and all this. Like, wow, let's get together. And, so we have a time in a couple weeks. We're getting together. And you find these mutual interests and your mutual values, and you like feel like you're growing together, and it's thrilling. And then eventually, you find that you disagree on something, right? I mean, none of us agree with everything about someone else. It's not going to be possible. And then you start to see the differences. And soon enough, some of those differences become obstacles in your relationship. They become obstacles to growing together. And now that thrill that was so fun getting to know someone is now a challenge. And what we usually do is change community. Right? I mean, that's what we do with churches. That's what we do with friends. The only people we can't really do that with is our family. What is the quote I heard? Anyways, it was good. I can't remember it. But which is interesting because when Jesus called his disciples his brothers and sisters, he prayed to God the Father, and he called his apprentices, his disciples, his brothers and sisters. Jerry Cook, one of my mentors when I was in ministry classes 20-some years ago, and we're talking about missiology, like church mission. And we're talking vision and mission and those statements and like mission statements and your core values and stuff. And he would say, before you can set any of those things in a Christian community, you have to first devote yourselves to each other around Jesus. Step one. You're committed to each other because of Jesus. And then he says you can then from there, from that commitment, you can start to develop your identity as a community, your values, your purpose, your mission statement. And I would argue with him. I'd be like, I know you're the smartest guy I know, but I have another better idea. Like, why don't you just get people who already all have the same vision and identity together in the first place to start? Because it's going to go so much faster, right? It's going to be so much easier if you just get a bunch of like-minded people together. And he would say, it's not the way Jesus did it. And I was like, well, Jesus maybe didn't do everything just perfectly. Maybe there's another way. He just did this way, and there's no, And he's like, and Jerry Cook is like, this is a 2-year discussion that we had. That's how stubborn I am. But he said it will never happen in true Christian community in that order. He said, first you devote yourselves to each other. And your devotion to each other is, if your devotion to each other is based on common culture alone or common values alone, it will not last. And so think of this first century church. It was a few hundred people maybe. 100 people were closer, and Jesus had these like 12 disciples and a smaller group that was like kind of around them. But they had impact in that tiny group of people that has brought us here today, this morning. We know it's not because they all got along. Like when you read like Paul in Romans, and he's talking to the church, and he just assumes like that church is done in community, that spiritual growth is done in community. And that's why he goes on to say, that's why you need to have patience. You need to have long suffering. You need to have self-control. And he's telling the church all these things because they're running into all these obstacles with each other. The hardest part, though, I think, in community and why many of us would choose loneliness over community is because you have to be vulnerable. Like, it's this fear that if people really knew me for who I am, like if I bare my soul, I will be rejected and face another hurt. There's the element of risk, and you can only experience the fullness of Jesus in community, but in true community, you're also gonna get hurt. So we're weighing it out, in community, like how vulnerable can I be before I get hurt and still grow in Jesus and still grow in this community. And it's this balance that we're trying to find. But in true community, you will get hurt, but it's also the only way of finding healing and purpose and joy and identity. True community depends on vulnerability and accountability. You can't have one without the other. Without vulnerability, the community will just be surface level, and without accountability, it's hard to make actual change. A couple years ago, I shared this dream I had, where I was, okay, sorry for this again. I'm apologizing again. I shared it a few years ago, I guess I had this dream. I was in this house. I needed to take a shower. And it's like, so I'm looking around, looking for the bathroom, and I'm asking people, where's the bathrooms, where's the showers? And the shower was in the middle of the living room, in like the common area, and there was no curtains. This is my dream. So I'm like, okay, don't picture this, but like, it's more of a nightmare, actually. But I'm looking around in this house and going from room to room trying to find a bathroom, but all the showers were in the middle of the living room. And then I woke up, like sweating. I was like, that's the worst dream ever. But on some sense, I think that is, what God's speaking to me in this very demented, weird dream. Strange, maybe not demented, strange. A strange way of telling me, like, this is what community looks like, is you can't hide. You have to, like, bare your soul. And you have to, a very crude metaphor, shower in the living room. Like, that's what true community is. Not that we're going to start a nudist colony or anything like that. So just all those cult pictures that you're thinking of, that's not happening. But to be that vulnerable enough to share our hurts and our emotions, our wounds, our pains, our weaknesses, our sins. We have to be willing to bear our soul in community or live superficially and not realize everything that God has in store for us. And I always love, remember, like, we went through Leviticus for like a year, and if I ever write a book, yes, we went through Leviticus for a year at Branches. This is the most fun I've ever had preaching. And if I ever write a book, it's going to be called Walking the Goat. Okay? So don't steal that idea from me. I don't think anybody has it. But this idea, there's this sin offering, like, Leviticus talks about all these sacrifices that they made for their sins. And there's like an offering for when you've offended somebody else, like one of your neighbors, and you've offended them. So what you need to do is you need to take a goat and you bring it to the temple and you sacrifice this goat to pay for these sins that you've offended and hurt your community. But the thing about that I love is that there's like people walking down the street with their goats, and you know what they're going for. Like, they're like walking their goats. What sound does goats make? Yes, yeah, there we go. They're loud, they're making a mess, and they're walking their goat, and everybody sees them. Everybody sees them walking their goat through town. Like, you can't hide a goat. And they know they're going because they hurt someone. And they're going to do this as part of making amends for the hurt that they caused somebody else. What if that was our culture? Not like making animal sacrifices and literally walking a goat, but what if, like, spiritually, emotionally, we were walking our goat? That there wasn't a shame in sharing our pains and our sins and the ways we've hurt others and the ways we've been hurt. What if there was a community that wasn't a big deal because everybody did it? You weren't like accused. Nobody looked down at you because you're walking your goat. Nobody pointed fingers. Nobody put a billboard out saying, like, dragging you through the dirt because of what you did. You just walked your goat, and everybody else was walking their goats. Like, this is the picture that God was creating in Leviticus of the community that he was building, where there wasn't a shame. So what now, after all this, and I'm crying, and I guess I just wish I did all this. This is like a hard one to preach because it's difficult to do. There's a song that came out like last fall by Drew Holcomb and his wife Ellie Holcomb. It's called Brick by Brick. I love it. We should have played it, but like it says this. It says, "What if I believed it when you said you want to be around me?" That's a good question. What if I could see that you've been here all along, and suddenly the story that I told myself is unraveling? The more I'm in your company, the less I am alone. And the chorus says, brick by brick, you're taking this wall apart. It took me years to build that fortress around my broken heart, but your patient hand goes stone by stone. Pain can build a prison, but your love's making me a home. Isn't that good? The second verse is good too, but I'm not going to get through it. Community doesn't grow overnight. It takes time. And So I guess the point of I wanted to share that song that is called Brick by Brick is I encourage you to start somewhere. Whether it's like this fortress that we build these walls around our heart to protect ourselves from being hurt in true community and to be able to take a step towards the freedom of not living in that shame of what we've done, but to tear down the walls that we would start to become our true self that God created us to be. I encourage you, if that's you, to brick by brick, take a step. Let yourself be vulnerable. I think this is one of the best parts of Rooted, as so many of us are going through Rooted right now. It is an incredible opportunity to take this step into true community where you are in a place with people who only love you and are not going to shame you. You can let your guard down. You can walk your goat. Tonight's Rooted group, I hope you're all bringing goats. Jesus said he didn't come to call the righteous, but the sinner. And so the church should look maybe less like a show of people who got it all together, more like a hospital. And maybe Sunday morning should be more like the Monday night AA group. And I think then we'd start to see the signs, the miracles. We'd see the wonders when we start opening ourselves and letting ourselves be available to that community. So as we wrap up today, we're going to share communion. Jesus taught in community. He was also betrayed in community. He was abandoned in community. But all of that was in order for us to find true communion. Like that Jesus was the one who suffered on our account. So every Sunday as we conclude our service together and we go to this communion table, I love that it's the symbol that we look at right now is not a throne, but it's a table. That God's inviting us to sit in communion with him at this table. He paid the ultimate price that we couldn't pay for our sins in order for us to share this communion with him and with each other. So we're gonna sing a song, and as we do that, we'll come up through the center aisle. We'll serve you. You can take the bread and dip it into the juice and take that as we go up back around the sides. And I encourage you to, as we come back to our seats, to let's stand together and finish singing this song together. But let this table be one of those steps where brick by brick, we're letting ourselves be our real us, be a real you, taking down the walls around our heart. Because at this table, there's love, there's acceptance, and forgiveness. So Jesus, thank you for that love, that acceptance, that forgiveness, that we don't have to walk in condemnation or shame. Help us to live that. Help us to extend that to others. Help us to practice it here in this community so that when we go out to our homes and our workplace and our schools,